The golden halls of the Galactic Council stretched beyond sight, their walls carved from crystallized starlight that hummed with ancient power. 12 different species had gathered here for 3,000 years, ruling the galaxy with technology that bent reality itself to their will. Today felt no different from countless others until the sensors began screaming warnings nobody wanted to hear. Ambassador Quinn shuffled his 6 legs nervously as he approached the central podium where the council's most powerful leaders sat. In their floating chairs, his insectoid features twitched with uncertainty as he clutched the datapad containing readings that would change everything. The Hivers were known for their careful nature, never speaking unless absolutely certain of their facts, which made his presence here all the more unusual. "Honored council members," Quinn began, his voice carrying the clicking undertones of his species, "our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual energy signatures in the Orion Arm sector. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Commander Thel of the Valorian fleet barely looked up from his tactical display. His crystalline armor caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the floor as he dismissed the report with a wave of his hand. The Valorians had conquered 47 worlds in the last century alone, their technology so advanced that most species surrendered without firing a single shot. "Probably just another stellar anomaly," Thel said, his voice carrying the arrogance that came with never having lost a battle. "Our sensors detect strange readings all the time in unexplored regions. Usually turns out to be nothing more than cosmic radiation or dying stars." The Mandari representative, a tall being with pale blue skin and enormous black eyes, tilted her head slightly. Vera's telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotions of everyone in the chamber, and she felt something troubling in Quinn's mental patterns. Fear mixed with curiosity created a combination that made her uncomfortable. "The readings suggest artificial origin," Quinn continued, his mandibles clicking faster now. "Energy patterns indicate possible technological development, though the signatures are crude compared to our standards." Science Officer Kale of the Zentari delegation leaned forward in his chair. His species had developed the Council's most advanced scanner technology, capable of detecting life forms across entire solar systems. If the readings were artificial, that meant contact with a new species, and new species meant either new slaves or new resources to exploit. "How crude?" Kale asked, his voice carrying the mechanical precision his people were known for. "Are we talking about basic nuclear technology or something more primitive?" "The energy signatures suggest chemical propulsion systems," Quinn replied, consulting his datapad. "Electromagnetic communications, possibly early fusion technology. Nothing that would pose any threat to Council vessels." Laughter rippled through the chamber. The idea that any species using such primitive technology could challenge the Council seemed absurd. Their shields could deflect the output of entire stars, their weapons could crack planets in half, and their ships moved faster than light itself, without breaking the physical laws that bound lesser civilizations. "Chemical propulsion?" Thel repeated, his laughter causing his armor to ring like wind chimes. "They're still burning fuel to move through space. How quaint." The Council's history was filled with encounters like this. They would arrive at a new world, demonstrate their superior technology, and the native species would immediately surrender. Most civilizations begged to join the Council once they realized the benefits of membership. Those that refused were quickly conquered and integrated by force. "Should we send a diplomatic mission?" asked Ambassador Rin of the Aquatic Federation, her voice bubbling through the water-filled speaking apparatus that allowed her to communicate in the chamber's atmosphere. "A small expeditionary force should suffice," Thel decided. 3 ships, standard first contact protocol. We'll give them the usual choice, join the Council voluntarily or be absorbed by force. The standard protocol had worked for 3 millennia. Council ships would arrive, broadcasting messages in 17 different galactic languages. They would demonstrate their technological superiority by casually manipulating local spacetime, moving asteroids or redirecting comets. When the native species realized they were completely outmatched, negotiations would begin. "Any signs of interstellar travel capability?" Vera asked, her telepathic senses picking up something unusual in the data patterns. Limited, Quinn replied. They appeared to have spread to several worlds within their local system, but no evidence of faster-than-light travel. Their vessels seemed to be confined to sublight speeds. This made the situation even more routine. Species that hadn't developed. Faster-than-light travel were always the easiest to control. They couldn't flee to distant stars or mount any effective resistance across multiple systems. The Council could simply blockade their home system and force compliance through economic pressure. Biological readings? Kale inquired, already beginning to categorize the new species for integration into Council databases. Carbon-based life. Forms similar to dozens of species already in the Council. They appear to be bipedal, similar in size to Valorians, but without crystalline structure. Their technology suggests they're relatively young as a spacefaring civilization. The Council members exchanged glances filled with the confidence that came from absolute power. Another primitive species to add to their collection, another system. To exploit for resources, another population to provide labor for their vast empire. I'll lead the expeditionary force myself, Fell announced. 3 ships should be more than enough to handle whatever crude weapons they might have developed. We'll be back within a standard cycle with their surrender documents. As the Council session ended, the members dispersed to their various ships and stations, confident that they were about to add another easy conquest to their long history. None of them suspected that the energy signatures coming from the Orion Arm represented something completely outside their experience. None of them realized that the species they were about to encounter had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting wars that made Council conflicts look like children's games. The Golden Halls fell silent as the great leaders departed, their minds already focused on dividing the spoils of victory from a battle they assumed had already been won. In the depths of space, 3 Council warships prepared for departure, their crews expecting nothing more than a routine demonstration of superiority followed by another species' inevitable surrender. They had no idea they were about to encounter humanity. Space around the Sol system shimmered as 3 massive vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel, their elegant curves reflecting the distant sun's light like jewels against the cosmic darkness. The Council Expeditionary Force had arrived. With the casual confidence of apex predators entering what they assumed was prey territory, Captain Reth stood in the center of his ship's command sphere, surrounded by holographic displays showing tactical information about the system they had just entered. His elongated skull bore the ritual scars of a dozen successful conquests, each mark representing a species that had knelt before Council authority. The Zentari captain expected this mission to earn him another scar within days. Initial scans. Complete, reported Navigation Officer Dex, her 4 arms working multiple control interfaces simultaneously. 9 planetary bodies, 1 inhabited world in the optimal life zone. Population readings suggest approximately 8 billion sentient beings. Reth nodded approvingly. 8 billion new subjects for the Council meant significant resources for exploitation. The larger the population, the more valuable the conquest would be when they returned to present their victory to the leadership. Any defensive installations? He asked, though the question was merely routine. Species at this technological level rarely had anything that could threaten Council vessels. Primitive orbital platforms detected around the inhabited world and its moon, Dex replied. Energy signatures suggest basic fusion reactors and crude electromagnetic accelerators. Nothing that could penetrate our shields. The other 2 ships in the formation, commanded by Captain Jor of the Valorians and Captain Nim of the Aquatic Federation, maintained perfect formation as they moved deeper into the system. Their crews were equally confident, having participated in dozens of similar operations throughout their careers. Begin standard first contact transmission, Reth ordered. All languages, full diplomatic protocol. The communication array began broadcasting the same message that had been used for 3,000 years, translated into 17 different galactic languages. The message was simple: identify yourselves, acknowledge Council authority, and prepare For integration into galactic civilization, minutes passed without response. This was normal. Most species needed time to realize they were being contacted by a superior civilization. Some required hours or even days to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening to them. "Sir," Communications Officer Lef called out, her voice carrying a note of confusion. "We're receiving a response, but it's not in any recognized language pattern." "Audio," Reth commanded, the bridge filled with sounds unlike anything in Council databases. The language was harsh, filled with consonants that seemed to clash against each other. The tone carried an undertone of aggression that made several crew members uncomfortable. "Translation matrix is having difficulty," Lef reported. "The linguistic structure is completely foreign to our databases. However, we are beginning to decode basic meaning." As the translation systems worked, the crew began to understand fragments of the message. The beings called themselves humans. They claimed sovereignty over their system, and they were demanding to know the Council's intentions. Demanding? Ref laughed, his scarred features twisting with amusement. "They're demanding explanations." From us? The concept seemed absurd. Council ships represented the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. For a primitive species to demand anything from them was like insects demanding explanations from giants. "Sir, we have movement on sensors," Tactical Officer Zev announced. "Single vessel approaching from the third planet. Size approximately 2 kilometers in length." Reth studied the tactical display with interest. 2 kilometers was larger than most Council ships, but size meant nothing when dealing with primitive technology. His own vessel was only 1.2 kilometers long, but it could destroy entire fleets of crewed ships without taking damage. "What's their estimated arrival time?" he asked. "At current speed, approximately 6 hours, Zev replied. "Sir, their propulsion system is unusual. They appear to be using some form of controlled nuclear detonation for thrust." The bridge crew exchanged glances of amazement. Nuclear pulse propulsion was something Council species had abandoned millions of years ago as crude and dangerous. The fact that these humans were still using such primitive methods confirmed their technological inferiority. "They're literally exploding nuclear weapons behind their ship to move forward," Science Officer Core observed, his instruments analyzing the approaching vessel. "The radiation levels alone should be lethal to their crew, unless they've developed adequate shielding," Reth mused. "Still, it's remarkably primitive." As the hours passed, the human vessel grew larger on their screens. What they saw defied their expectations of primitive technology. The ship was a massive construct of metal and composite materials, its hull scarred and patched from obvious combat damage. Unlike the smooth, artistic curves of Council vessels, this ship was angular and brutal, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. "Energy readings are off the charts," Core reported, his voice carrying confusion. "Their power output is enormous, but it's all nuclear-based. No exotic matter, no zero-point energy, just massive fusion reactors." "How many fusion reactors?" Ref asked. "Approximately 200, Core replied after checking his instruments twice. "Sir, this ship appears to be designed for extended combat operations. The weapon loadout is extensive." The tactical display showed the human vessel bristling with weapons. Massive electromagnetic accelerators, missile tubes, point defense systems, and what appeared to be nuclear warhead launchers covered every surface. The ship looked less like a vessel and more like a flying fortress designed for war. "They've certainly prepared for a fight," Captain Jor's voice came through the communication system from his ship. "Though I doubt their crude weapons could even scratch our shields." The human vessel came to a stop exactly 1 million kilometers from the Council formation. The distance was precise, calculated, and demonstrated that these humans understood tactical positioning even if their technology was primitive. "Incoming communication," Lef announced. Full visual this time. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the human vessel. The being who appeared was bipedal, as the scans had indicated, but there was something in his expression that made the Council crew uncomfortable. His eyes held a hardness that spoke of experience with violence, and his bearing suggested someone accustomed to command in dangerous situations. "I am Captain Smith of the United Earthship Defiant," the human said, his image crystal clear despite the primitive communication system. "You have entered human space without permission and ignored our demands for identification. State your intentions or leave immediately." The council crew stared in shocked silence. No species had ever issued ultimatums to them. The very concept was so foreign that several officers looked to their captain for guidance on how to respond. "Captain Smith," Reth replied, his voice carrying the authority of 3 millennia of galactic dominance. "I am Captain Reth of the Galactic Council. You will lower your weapons and prepare for inspection. Your species is hereby invited to join the Council under our protection and guidance." "We don't need protection," Smith replied immediately. "And we don't need guidance. This is human space and you're trespassing." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council crew staring at a blank screen. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had refused their offer of membership and ordered them to leave. "Sir," Zev said quietly, "their weapons are powering up." The silence on the council bridges stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Never in 3,000 years of galactic expansion had anyone simply said no to the Council's offer of membership. The concept was so alien that several crew members stared at their instruments, wondering if their translation systems had malfunctioned. Science Officer Core focused his scanners on the human vessel, studying every detail of its construction. What he saw made him increasingly uncomfortable. The ship's hull told a story of countless battles, with sections of different metals welded together in obvious repair work. Scorch marks from energy weapons covered the armor plating, and several areas showed damage from what appeared to be kinetic impacts. "Captain," Core said quietly, "this vessel has seen extensive combat. The damage patterns suggest they've fought multiple engagements against various weapon types." "Against whom?" Reth asked, genuinely curious. "They haven't achieved interstellar travel, so who could they have been fighting?" "The logical conclusion would be other humans," Core replied after reviewing his scans. "Sir, the weapon impacts suggest they've been fighting wars against their own species." The council crew exchanged glances of confusion. Most species achieved peace within their own kind before developing advanced technology. The Council's own member races had long ago abandoned internal conflict in favor of expansion and conquest of other worlds. "They fight their own kind?" Tactical Officer Zev asked, his voice carrying disbelief. "With weapons capable of causing this much damage?" On the Valorian vessel, Captain Jor was conducting his own analysis. His crystalline armor resonated with harmonic frequencies as he studied the human ship's weapon systems. What he found disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. "Captain Reth," Jor's voice came through the communication system, "I'm detecting nuclear warhead storage bays throughout their vessel. They appear to be carrying enough nuclear weapons to sterilize a planet." "Impossible," Reth replied. "No species would arm their ships with weapons capable of destroying their own worlds." "The signatures are unmistakable," Jor insisted. "They have fusion bombs, fission bombs, and what appears to be enhanced radiation weapons. Captain, they're carrying enough firepower to commit genocide." The Mindari telepath on Ref's ship, a young officer named Kira, had been quietly probing the edges of the human captain's consciousness. What she found made her retreat immediately, her pale blue skin turning even paler with shock. "Captain," Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. "I attempted to scan the human commander's mind. I had to break contact immediately." "What did you find?" Reth asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Memories of warfare beyond comprehension," Kira replied, her hands trembling slightly. "This species has spent their entire recorded history fighting themselves. They've developed weapons and tactics specifically designed to kill their own kind. The psychological patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The human ship maintained its position, weapons powered but not yet firing. The Council formation remained similarly positioned, their crews struggling to understand what they were facing. "Open a channel," Reth ordered. "Let's try diplomatic resolution." Captain Smith's face appeared on the screen again, his expression unchanged from their previous conversation. Behind him, the human bridge showed a level of activity that suggested preparation for combat. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency, their actions coordinated by years of training. Captain Smith, Reth began, perhaps we can discuss this situation reasonably. The Council has much to offer your species. Advanced technology, protection from hostile forces, access to galactic trade networks. We don't need your protection, Smith replied, his tone carrying absolute certainty. We've been protecting ourselves for thousands of years. As for your technology, we'll develop our own or take what we need from our enemies. Your enemies? Reth asked. You have no interstellar neighbors who are your enemies. Anyone who threatens human freedom, Smith answered without hesitation. That includes you if you don't leave our space immediately? The casual way the human spoke about taking technology from enemies sent chills through the Council crews. This species talked about warfare and conquest as if they were normal parts of existence. Captain, Zev interrupted, I'm detecting additional vessels approaching from the inner system. Multiple contacts, various sizes. The tactical display lit up with dozens of new contacts. Ships of different configurations emerged from behind. Planets and asteroids forming a loose formation around the Defiant. Some were smaller than the main vessel, others appeared to be converted cargo ships, and several showed the same battle damage that scarred their flagship. A fleet? Reth breathed. They have an entire fleet? Sir, Core reported, power readings indicate every one of those vessels is armed with nuclear weapons. They're not just warships, they're floating nuclear arsenals? The Mindari telepath Kira attempted to probe other human minds in the fleet, hoping to find someone less disturbing than their captain. She made contact with a human fighter pilot and immediately regretted it. The pilot's thoughts were filled with tactical assessments, target priorities, and most terrifying of all, complete acceptance of his own death if it meant destroying enemy ships. They're all like this, Kira whispered. Every human mind I touch carries the same patterns. They're prepared to die fighting rather than surrender? Captain Smith's image remained steady on the screen as he waited for the Council's response. Behind him, status reports flowed in from the human fleet, their crews preparing for what they clearly expected to be a battle. Captain Smith, Reth tried again, surely we can reach an understanding. The Council's technology could benefit your species greatly. We could share knowledge of faster-than-light travel, advanced energy systems, medical techniques. We'll figure out faster-than-light travel ourselves, Smith replied. We don't need your help, and we don't want it. What we want is for you to leave our space, and if we refuse? Reth asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Then you'll discover why humans have survived every war we've ever fought, Smith said, his expression hardening. We don't lose because we don't know how to quit. We'll keep fighting until either we win or there's nothing left to fight with. The communication ended again, leaving the Council crews staring at their screens in growing horror. They were facing a species that had spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of warfare, armed with nuclear weapons and completely unwilling to submit to superior authority. Sir, Zev said quietly, what are your orders? Captain Reth stared at the tactical display showing the human fleet. For the first time in his career, he wasn't sure what to do. The Council's standard protocols had never covered a situation like this. They had never encountered a species that preferred war to peace, death to surrender, or independence to the benefits of Council membership. Power up weapons, he finally ordered. If they want a demonstration of superior technology, we'll give them one. The Council ship's weapon systems hummed to life, their exotic energy matrices capable of vaporizing entire cities. But as their weapons powered up, every human ship in the system responded by activating their own weapon systems. Nuclear warheads armed themselves, electromagnetic accelerators charged, and point defense systems came online. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't negotiating. They were preparing for war. The first shot came from Captain Reth's flagship, a brilliant beam of coherent energy that could slice through a mountain. The weapon struck the Defiant's shields and dispersed harmlessly, exactly as expected. The demonstration was meant to show the humans the futility of resistance, to convince them that Council technology was beyond their ability to counter. Instead, every human ship in the system opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Council fleet erupted in chaos. Thousands of kinetic projectiles, each one a solid metal slug, accelerated to tremendous velocity, sleeted through the void. Nuclear missiles with yields capable of cracking moons streaked toward the Council vessels. Most terrifying of all, the humans launched clouds of smaller attack craft that moved with suicidal determination toward their targets. "Shields holding," Zev reported, but his voice carried uncertainty. "Sir, they're using solid projectiles. Our shields are designed for energy weapons." The Council's defensive systems had been perfected over millennia of warfare against civilizations that used sophisticated energy weapons. Their shields could deflect planet-killing beams and absorb the output of stellar bombardment. But they had never been designed to stop simple chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. "Damage to Section 12, came a report from the engineering deck. One of their projectiles penetrated the outer hull. Captain Reth stared at his tactical display in disbelief. A primitive kinetic weapon had actually damaged his ship. The projectile had been nothing more than a tungsten rod, but it had been moving so fast that it punched through advanced armor like paper. "Return fire," he ordered. "All weapons." The Council ships unleashed their full firepower. Energy beams that could vaporize cities swept across the human fleet, striking multiple vessels. For a moment, it seemed like the demonstration had worked. Several human ships showed damage, their hulls glowing from the intense heat. Then the humans did something that froze the Council crews with horror. The damaged vessels didn't retreat. They didn't attempt to repair their systems. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the Council ships, their nuclear arsenals primed for detonation. "They're ramming us," Tactical Officer Zev shouted. "Multiple vessels on collision course." "Evasive maneuvers," Reth ordered, but his ship was too large to avoid the incoming attackers. The first human vessel struck Captain Jor's Valorian ship amidships, its nuclear warheads detonating on impact. The explosion was visible from across the system, a miniature sun that lasted for several seconds. When the light faded, the Valorian vessel was crippled, its crystalline armor shattered and its weapon systems offline. "Jor, respond," Reth called through the communication system. "Status report." "Hull breaches throughout the ship," came Jor's weakened voice. "They didn't just ram us, they used their ship as a delivery system for nuclear weapons. The entire forward section is gone." The concept was so alien that several Council crew members stared at their instruments in shock. Using spacecraft as weapons was beyond their understanding. Ships were valuable, representing years of construction and irreplaceable technology. The idea of deliberately destroying them in combat was incomprehensible. "Sir, Science Officer Core reported, I'm detecting something unusual about their attack patterns. They're not trying to capture our vessels or disable our weapons. They're trying to kill us." The distinction was important. Council warfare followed established protocols, designed to minimize casualties and preserve valuable resources. Ships were disabled rather than destroyed, crews were captured rather than killed, and conquered populations were integrated rather than exterminated. Human warfare apparently followed no such rules. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship." Communications Officer Leff announced. Captain Smith's face appeared on the screen, but his background had changed. The human bridge was now filled with smoke and sparks, showing obvious battle damage. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the crew's faces, but their expressions remained determined. "Council vessels," Smith said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command in crisis situations. "You have one chance to withdraw from our space. Continue this attack and we will destroy you. Your ship is damaged," Reth pointed out. "Our sensors show hull breaches and power failures throughout your vessel. Damage is irrelevant," Smith replied. "We've been fighting wars for 5,000 years. We know how to win battles while losing ships." The communication ended, but the human fleet's actions spoke louder than words. Despite taking casualties, despite losing vessels to Council weapons, the humans continued their attack with undiminished fury. "Sir," Zev reported, "their smaller craft are targeting our weapon systems specifically. They're using suicide attacks to disable our primary batteries." The Council crews watched in growing horror as human fighters deliberately crashed into their ship's weapon emplacements. Each attack destroyed the human vessel completely, but it also eliminated Council weapons that had taken years to construct. "They're trading lives for tactical advantage," Kor observed, his voice carrying disbelief. "They're killing themselves to weaken our combat capability." Mindari telepath Kira attempted to understand the human mindset by probing the consciousness of attacking pilots. What she found made her break contact immediately and retreat to the corner of the bridge, her body shaking with shock. "They're not being forced to sacrifice themselves," she whispered. "They're choosing to do it. They consider it an honor to die for their species." The concept of voluntary self-sacrifice for military advantage was completely foreign to Council. Thinking, their telepathic abilities meant that individual consciousness was valued above all else. The idea that someone would deliberately extinguish their own awareness was more disturbing than any physical threat. "Captain," Zev announced, "the human flagship is moving toward us. They're on a collision course." The Defiant, despite its battle damage, was accelerating directly toward Reth's ship. Its nuclear arsenal had been armed, and the vessel's trajectory would result in a direct impact with the Council flagship. "They're going to ram us," Reth realized. "The entire ship is a weapon." "Sir," Kor reported, "energy readings indicate they're overloading their fusion reactors. When they impact, the explosion will be equivalent to a stellar flare." The Council crews faced a choice that had never existed in their military doctrine. They could continue fighting and face certain destruction, or they could do something that no Council ship had ever done in 3,000 years of warfare. They could retreat. "All ships," Reth ordered, his voice carrying the weight of history, "withdraw to safe distance. Prepare for emergency faster-than-light departure." The Council vessels began to pull back, their crews struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. The humans had turned warfare into something beyond their understanding, combining technology with a willingness to sacrifice that made them more dangerous than any weapon. As the Council ships prepared to flee, Captain Smith's voice came through the communication system one final time. "Remember this day," he said. "Remember that humanity will never bow to anyone. Come back if you want, but understand that we'll be ready for you." The Defiant continued its attack run even as the Council ships withdrew, its crew prepared to die rather than allow their enemies to escape unharmed. Only the Council's faster-than-light capability saved them from destruction. As space folded around their vessels, carrying them away from the Sol system, the Council crews realized they had encountered something completely outside their experience. They had met a species that treated warfare as an art form, death as an acceptable outcome, and freedom as more valuable than life itself. The age of easy conquest was over. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from 12 species gathered in their golden halls, but the atmosphere had changed completely from their previous meeting. Gone was the casual arrogance that had defined their civilization for 3 millennia. In its place sat a fear so profound that even the telepathic Mindori could barely function. Ambassador Quinn clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed the battle reports. The Hiver had been analyzing the tactical data for days, trying to understand what had happened in the Sol system. His usually methodical nature had been shattered by readings that defied every military principle the Council had ever developed. "The humans lost 14 vessels," he reported to the assembled Council. "We lost 1 ship completely destroyed, another crippled beyond repair, and suffered damage to the 3rd. By any tactical measure, we won the engagement." "Then why does it feel like we lost?" asked Ambassador Rin, her aquatic form trembling within her environmental suit. "Why are we here discussing threat assessment instead of integration protocols?" The answer came from Commander Thel, whose crystalline armor now bore fresh cracks from the battle. The Valorian commander had barely escaped with his life when the human vessel had rammed his ship, and the experience had changed him fundamentally. Because they were willing to lose, Thel said, his voice carrying none of its previous confidence. The humans weren't trying to win in any sense we understand. They were trying to hurt us as much as possible before they died. Science officer. Kale had been studying the human weapons and tactics since the fleet's return. His analysis painted a picture of a species that had turned warfare into something approaching religious devotion. Every aspect of their technology was designed for maximum destruction rather than elegant efficiency. Their ships are not exploration vessels converted for combat, Kale reported. They are weapons platforms designed from the beginning for war. Every system serves the primary purpose of destroying enemies, even at the cost of the vessel itself. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The concept of building ships specifically for destruction went against everything they believed about space travel. Their vessels were elegant, efficient, and designed to last for centuries. The idea of creating something meant to be destroyed was alien to their thinking. What about their psychology? Asked Vera, the Mindari representative. Were you able to complete your analysis of their mental patterns? The question was directed at Kira, the young telepath who had participated in the battle. The experience had traumatized her so severely that she had been unable to sleep since returning to council space. They are not like us, Kira said quietly. Their minds are shaped by constant conflict. They think in terms of acceptable losses, strategic sacrifice, and victory through attrition. They view death in battle as honorable rather than tragic. That's impossible, Ambassador Rin protested. No species can survive constant warfare. Internal conflict would destroy them before they develop space travel. That's what we thought, Thel replied. But their conflict made them stronger. They've spent 5,000 years perfecting the art of war, and they're better at it than we are. The admission sent shock waves through the chamber. The Council had built their civilization on the assumption that they were the galaxy's apex. Predators. The idea that a primitive species could be superior to them in any way challenged their fundamental worldview. How is that possible? Quinn asked. Our technology is millions of years more advanced than theirs. Because they understand war in ways we never have, Thel explained. We fight to demonstrate superiority and force surrender. They fight to completely destroy their enemies. We use war as a tool for expansion. They use it as a means of survival. The tactical report supported Thel's assessment. Human weapons were crude but devastatingly effective. Their ships were ugly but nearly indestructible. Their tactics were barbaric but strategically sound. Most importantly, their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory made them unpredictable and dangerous. Sir, a junior officer interrupted, we're receiving reports from our monitoring stations. The humans are expanding their defenses throughout their system. The main display activated, showing long-range sensor data from the Sol system. What the Council saw made their worst fears reality. The humans had not been weakened by the battle. They had learned from it. They're building weapons platforms around every planet, Kale reported, his voice carrying disbelief. Massive nuclear arsenals, electromagnetic accelerators, and what appears to be manufacturing facilities for warships. How many ships? Vera asked. Current estimates suggest over 200 vessels under construction, Kale replied. They're not just rebuilding their fleet, they're expanding it. The implications were staggering. Instead of being intimidated by Council technology, the humans were preparing for a larger conflict. They were treating the first engagement as a learning experience rather than a defeat. They're reverse engineering our technology, Thel added. Debris from my ship is being analyzed in their laboratories. They're incorporating our energy weapons into their own systems. The Council members stared at the displays in growing horror. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were preparing to take the war to their enemies. Sir, the junior officer continued, we're also detecting unusual energy signatures. From their outer planets, They appeared to be conducting some kind of industrial expansion on a massive scale. The sensor data showed human activity throughout their system. Mining operations on asteroids, manufacturing facilities on moons, and construction projects that dwarfed anything the Council had ever attempted. The humans were militarizing their entire solar system. They're preparing for a siege, Quinn realized, his insectoid features twitching with alarm. They expect us to return with a larger force, will we? Asked Ambassador Rin, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The Council had never faced a species that actually wanted to fight them. Every previous encounter had ended with negotiation, surrender, or quick conquest. The humans represented something completely outside their experience. We cannot, Thel said finally. A full-scale assault on their system would require the entire Council fleet. Even then, victory is not guaranteed. The admission of military uncertainty from the Council's greatest commander sent shock waves through the chamber. For 3,000 years, Council victory had been inevitable. The possibility of defeat had never been considered. What if we ignore them? Suggested Kale. They have no faster-than-light capability? We could simply avoid their system. 4. How long? Vera asked. Their technological development rate is extraordinary. They went from chemical rockets to nuclear pulse drives in less than a century. How long before they develop faster-than-light travel? The question terrified the Council more than any weapon. If humans developed interstellar travel while maintaining their warlike nature, they would become a threat to every civilization in the galaxy. We need to contain them, Quinn said. Establish a quarantine zone around their system. Prevent them from expanding beyond their current territory. With what ships? Thel asked. Any blockade would require constant patrols. The humans would attack every vessel we sent. Eventually, they would capture our technology and use it to break free. The Council faced an impossible situation. They could not conquer the humans, they could not ignore them, and they could not contain them indefinitely. For the first time in their history, they were dealing with a problem that had no solution. Sir, the junior officer announced, incoming transmission from the Sol system. The main screen activated, showing a human face that none of them recognized. This was not Captain Smith, but someone older, wearing what appeared to be civilian clothing. His expression was calm, professional, and somehow more disturbing than the warrior they had faced before. Galactic Council, the human said, his voice carrying the authority of high office. I am Secretary Williams of the United Earth Government. We have a proposal for you. The council members exchanged glances of confusion. They had expected threats, demands for reparations, or declarations of war. A diplomatic proposal was the last thing they had anticipated. We are prepared to negotiate a treaty of mutual non-aggression, Williams continued. Human space will remain off-limits to council vessels. In exchange, we will not expand beyond our current system boundaries until we achieve faster-than-light travel through our own research. And then, Vera asked, her telepathic abilities picking up undertones of steel beneath the human's diplomatic words. Then we will contact you again to renegotiate our agreement as equals, Williams replied. We have no desire for conquest. Council representatives, we simply will not tolerate being conquered. The proposal was reasonable, logical, and completely unacceptable to Council pride. Accepting it would mean acknowledging that a primitive species had forced the galaxy's greatest power to compromise. What guarantee do we have that you will honor such an agreement? Thel asked. The same guarantee you have always relied on. Williams answered. Fear of the consequences of breaking it. The difference is that now you understand what those consequences would be. The transmission ended, leaving the council to contemplate their impossible choice. They could accept the human proposal and maintain peace while admitting their limitations. They could reject it and face a war against an enemy that considered death preferable to surrender. Motion for recess, Quinn announced. We need time to consider this proposal. As the council members dispersed to consult with their respective governments, the golden halls fell silent once again. But the silence was different now. It was not the confident quiet of assured dominance, but the uncertain stillness of a civilization, confronting its own mortality. 3 days later, the council reconvened to deliver their answer. The vote was unanimous, though it came with reluctance that would echo through galactic history. The Galactic Council accepts the human proposal. Vera announced, her telepathic abilities confirming the emotional pain the decision caused every member present. A non-aggression treaty will be established with the Sol System. Human space is hereby declared off-limits to Council vessels. The announcement spread throughout the galaxy within hours. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Council had been forced to negotiate as equals with a species they could not conquer. The age of inevitable expansion was over. In the Sol System, Secretary Williams received the Council's acceptance with quiet satisfaction. Around him, the massive defense network continued its construction, and the shipyards worked at full capacity producing vessels designed for one purpose, ensuring that humanity would never again face the galaxy alone. The humans had won more than a battle. They had won recognition that some species could not be conquered, some freedoms could not be taken, and some prices were too high for even the galaxy's greatest power to pay. The stars themselves seemed different now, full of possibilities that had not existed before. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy not through diplomacy or scientific achievement, but through the simple, terrifying declaration that they would rather die free than live as slaves. And the galaxy would never be the same.